Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to begin the funeral services of Mrs. Edith Leib. We welcome those of you who are joining us online, and for those of you who are here, please take a moment to be sure that your cell phones have been turned off, not to disturb the sacred funeral ceremony. Her grandsons, Rabbis Aaron and Jason Leib, will be officiating. Again, just as a last and gentle reminder, please be sure that your phones have been turned off.
We're going to be saying Psalm 23, if you want to follow along, to the inside of the booklet. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me into the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over me. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. At this time, we would ask Melissa to come and speak.
My grandma, Ma Pete, was one of a kind and one of the most incredible women I know. Who else would get hit by a car, roll off the hood, and only have a broken wrist? Who else would handle getting carried headfirst out of a burning building? Because of her poor eyesight, Ma Pete lived her life through other people's enjoyment, accomplishments, and everyday activities. As soon as my brother Michael or I would get home from school, a date, a special occasion, the phone would ring, and Ma Pete would be on the phone waiting to hear it all, maybe even some drama. She would sometimes ask such detailed questions, like what somebody ate at the dinner or what color a door on the house next door was, that I had no clue about. As years went by, she struggled to understand me on the phone. My brother Michael took on the nightly tradition of calling her each night to tell him about his day, about Blake or I, or how he did at the casino. Believe it or not, she even went to the casino with him. If you knew my Ma Pete, anything she predicted came true. So my brother thought she would be a big help to him at the casino. Anyway, if Michael was busy or stayed at school too late and didn't call her, it would ruin her day, and she would call everyone trying to hunt him down. As much as she loved her family, she also loved the health club and exercising in bed early in the morning. A memory I will never forget is when my mom and I went to the health club with her and joined her in water aerobics class. She was way better than us. She was not even tired like me and my mom were. She was strong until the end. Because of the health club, my fondest memories that I will treasure forever are when she came to my house and held my son Blake and her great-grandson in her arms for the first time. Her smile melted my heart. I would like to thank Cornelia and Magda for taking such good care of her, my mom for sleeping over each week, and anyone that came to visit her in the recent weeks to spend time with and visit with my Ma Pete. Ma Pete, I have to say goodbye now, but I miss you deeply. I can't believe you are no longer with us, but I know you are deep within my heart. I now have a guardian angel looking after Blake and myself. I love you.
Hi, everyone. I really want to start off by just saying thank you to Cornelia and Magda for the great care, and I know how great care you guys took of Matt Pete. Just seeing her in the last few weeks, when she wasn't at her best, and when she wasn't with you guys, when she was in rehab in the hospital, I saw her, and I just really know how great you guys took care of her, and just seeing how her appearance and her fingernails, and just seeing, we all really appreciate it. I just really, the last, I don't even know how many years I've made it an effort to call Mont Pete every single day and talk to her, and just that's what I'm gonna miss most, is just that at the end of, I get home and like the first thing is, calling Mont Pete, or Mont Pete would call me sometimes, and, she needed to know everything. It wasn't just, she needed to know all the gossip of the family, and, just being able to communicate with her and share everything. And I know that it meant a lot to her. And, just all the memories, it's hard to sum up all the memories in one, but, just knowing that she was just amazing, and she cared about all of her whole family, and she just, truly wanted to know everything. Teaching, I just got a new job, and I know that she would want to hear all about it, and she would want to, my last job, she would ask me about specific students, like, how are the students today? Like, she just genuinely cared. And so just, Mont Pete, I love you, and, always going to have a special place in my heart.
Edith Handler, better known to us as Mont Pete, if you want to know why, talk to Jason and Auntie Marla, was born September 3rd, 1926 in Chicago, to her parents Abe and Jenny. They had 3 children, Mont Pete being the middle child. She was very close to both her younger brother Howard and her older sister Minnow. So close, in fact, that up until he got married, much later in life, Howard would eat dinner nightly at Mont Pete and Zadie's house. In fact, as a kid, I do not ever recall going over to Mont Pete and Zadie's house and Uncle Howard not sitting at his usual seat by the back door. Mont Pete spoke daily to Aunt Minnow and visited her when she could. In fact, she and Zadie escorted her parents out to California, often to spend the winter with Minnow. They were a close-knit family. She grew up in a 3-flat where every other apartment in the building was family, aunts, uncles, and cousins. Nothing mattered more to Mont Pete than family. When her mother had a stroke, she took care of her mother, placing her in a nursing home right down the block, enabling her to go and visit and feed her every single day. I remember every time we visited Mont Pete, we would go. She would take us. Pa would then join Howard at their house every night for dinner. As a child, she loved being outdoors and ran track and field, jumping hurdles in high school. Out of high school, she worked at Sears as well as for the war bonds, and soon after met Zadie. Zadie used to joke that he had not that had it not been for soup, if he had not stayed for soup, he never would have married Mont Pete. Zadie was referring to the meal which his sister, Aunt Helen, was having, where Mont Pete was a guest. Zadie showed up to pick up his mother and ended up staying for soup. With that bowl of soup began the very close relationship that Zadie and Mont Pete would share, neither one leaving each other's side for 54 years. Zadie was a very good and caring husband to Mont Pete. Mont Pete once told me he was 1 in a million. But the reverse is also true, that Mont Pete was 1 in a million for Zadie in the way that she loved and cared for him. She loved and cared for her children. My father, may rest in peace, Yibad L'chaim, my Uncle Kenny, and my Auntie Marla. She especially loved and was close to all her grandchildren, Jason, myself, Rachel, Melissa, Michael, Julia, and Ben, and enjoyed taking us to the zoo and being around us any chance she got. I want to specifically point out and thank my cousin Michael, who over the last bunch of years went above and beyond in his care for her, dedicating many hours on the phone with her and visiting her whenever he could. Anytime I called Mont Pete, she always thought I was Michael. She also loved all the great-grandchildren and cherished the visits she had with them. Earlier in life, she was active in Mikro Kodesh Sisterhood and could be found, along with Zadie, in the shul's kitchen cleaning chickens. She was a diehard fan of the soap opera General Hospital and used to relegate Zadie to watch baseball in the back room when it was on. She was an avid swimmer and water aerobics fanatic. Her happy place was the Galter Health Center across the street, and yearned to take us all there when we came for visits, as long as she still had free passes, of course. If I had to describe my Pete in 2 words, it would be inconspicuous and unassuming. She never wore fancy clothes or wore any jewelry. She was the opposite of materialistic. In fact, she once told me Zadie never bought her jewelry. Intrigued by this, I asked why, and she simply said, I didn't need it. She didn't look to go out or yearn for vacations. Her happiness was being content, sitting at home with Zadie and knowing that everyone was happy and healthy. After Zadie's funeral, I believe it was a cold rainy day, she was distraught that we buried him in the cold and rain, and commented how she didn't want to be buried in the cold and rain. Whereupon I responded, what difference does it make if the person is dead? It took me many years to realize that she was so concerned about her husband and how he felt that even though it was irrational for her to worry about what he was feeling at his funeral, she still felt his pain. That is what true love is, and what being bound to another one means. Another time I saw this was a few years after Zadie's death, when there was a fire in the apartment next door, and the firefighters pulled her out of the window to safety. When I spoke to her after, the first thing she said was, thank God your Zadie wasn't alive, he never would have made it out. She would often say these crazy things, but they always had one thing in common. She couldn't help but think and care for him even long after he was gone. Much like my Pete, today is a very inconspicuous and widely unknown day in the Jewish calendar. Today is the holiday known as Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av. In fact, according to the Talmud, today is the happiest day of the year, more so than Yom Kippur. While there are many answers given as to the origin of the day, the Talmud relates that it was the day when single girls would go out in simple white clothing so as not to embarrass any girl that did not have fine clothing, and they would dance in the fields to attract male suitors. So in essence, it was a day of love and happiness to promote marriage unions. How befitting that my Pete, an unassuming woman who cared for everyone's happiness and was always interested in the latest dating, marriage, and new baby gossip, would be buried on this holy and happy day. On behalf of our family, I would like to thank her amazing caregivers, Magda and Cornelia, who did an amazing job caring and loving her for these past 14 years. Without your care and dedication, she would not have made it as long as she did. You helped her retain her dignity and sense of peace, being able to live in her own home. So thank you. Thank you to Scott as well for keeping an eye on my Pete, and who, whenever was called upon, checked in on her and always made sure the sidewalks were shoveled. Much like this unique and happy day where marriage unions were formed centuries ago, my Pete was our matriarch that unified our family together with Zadie. In her unassuming and inconspicuous ways, she always tried to help, even when it wasn't understood, and loved and cared for all of her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. May her memory be a blessing that we always aspire to. Tehei nishmasat tzor b'tzor ha'chaim. May her soul live on for all eternity.
It's strange to stand here. It's strange to cry. Because after all, you're my grandmother for very close to almost 45 years. That's rather insane. The world was once a much smaller place. So small, in fact, you didn't drive. Zadie was at work. The snow had fallen and was still falling. And you hadn't seen Jason yet. And so you walked from Foster to Lunt when we lived there. That's something that no other grandchild could claim fame to, because, as I said, the world then was a much smaller place. But then we moved to Des Plaines, and even still, almost daily trips were made. The zoo was visited. In fact, you'll probably be rather upset to know that I'm a little bit perturbed that 4 of my children that were with me on this trip, when I tried to convince them almost daily to make a visit to the zoo, and they rather harshly declined. And in fact, it brought up memories of my brother making up his car sickness so as not to have to sit in the car to the zoo once we had moved out to Des Plaines. But the zoo was a place that we visited almost daily. You and Zadie, I, eventually my brother and my sister, and as a person who was visually impaired before you, you would painstakingly stand with me at every exhibit, help me to see, maybe even without the ability to actually see, the animals that we were seeing. It's also a strange day in the sense that it hit me this morning that sometimes when I feel in a bit of a bind, or I wake from a bad dream, or I'm having a hard time, the easiest way to calm myself is to just call up your phone number in my head, being as it's the first and the only number in my life that has never, ever, ever changed. Ever. The only thing, of course, is that there wasn't really an area code, or the area codes didn't matter, and then area codes became 312 and all kinds of whatnot, and so today it's 773. But the number itself, 7845327, will never, or until today, when it became sort of meaningless, it's not there for me to just repeat over in my head without actually having to use my brain to think of the numbers. But the world was really a small place. I still recall coming to your house as I don't even think it hit me as a teenager, only after I really, moved on and left. The hours that were spent playing out in the back, playing catch, playing wiffle ball, running around, barbecuing. There was a time actually when there were, I'm sure my aunt and uncle will remember well, there was a time when there were vegetables in the garden there. It's the tiniest little space in the world. I had no idea. I thought it was huge. And the space between the house and the walkway out to Foster, where we would hang a left to go visit great-grandma in the wheelchair. So tiny. But at that time it seemed so big. I recall in your dedication to great-grandma in the wheelchair, it knew no bounds. And as a young child who would almost daily walk with you to see her, a woman who they'll have to correct me, I'm going to say 23 years, but it might be more, maybe a little less, had a stroke and didn't speak. She was unable to communicate. And every day you would go, and as a young child to watch that left an impression that, to be honest, I don't even know if I'll ever totally understand where and how it touches me. In fact, the first funeral that I ever went to, I'm sure my brother as well, my brother for sure because he's younger, was great grandma's funeral. Oh, Blake can most definitely speak. I stand here proud, my Pete, because I am the eldest grandson of your grandchildren, and with Blake over there, 16 great-grandchildren. Some run, that's what I would say. Some run. I saw a picture this morning, and it saddens me a little bit to know, not even maybe a lot, that I have pictures I'll look back on, and I will see, it's about you today, my Pete, so I'll see my Pete, but also Sadie, rolling around on the floor. I literally have a picture with, I think it's my second son, in fact. He's on his back, and my Pete is on her back, on the floor, and they're just rolling around together. And I could tell you firsthand from the experience of the love that I felt as a grandchild that if she could, she'd just roll on the floor right now with Blake, wouldn't really pay much attention to any of the rest of you here today. I'm fairly certain of that. I don't really even remember so much, and writing never helped me anyways. All that I wanted to say, because I'm... well, I guess, maybe you'll see my father. But in some way, it hurts more to know that I'm a very privileged person. I was born with 4 grandparents alive. I was even born with 3 great-grandparents alive. I have 2 sides, of course. And that's it. So it's quite overwhelming. I had no idea it would be that overwhelming. I'll just share a little funny story. When we were younger, and you and Zadie came to visit, because it just shows a little bit the love and playfulness and that they had. We had a salami in the house, and we noticed that every once in a while Zadie would walk in, he'd walk out, wasn't in the kitchen for very long. My Pete would go in, and she'd walk out. He'd go in, she'd walk out, until one day, after a few moments, we hear, "Earl, stop eating the kid's salami." And then he said, "Edith, you're eating the kid's salami." And I could tell everybody that on that very day, there was not one Rachel, not one Aaron, and not one Jason that had a piece of salami. That I could promise you. And there was no salami left. That was the way that it went, and that was that it was. My brother had mentioned it, but it's very... For those who got to spend hours in the house, actually, I don't know, do you remember even, we used to play in the hallway? We used to play with we used to play with like why am I saying squash? You know the other game, not tennis, no, the blue ball, racquetball. That's right. It seemed miles long, that hall. I could walk it in 2.5 steps, but it was miles long. It always seemed that way. Always seemed that way. But I just wanted to reiterate that they had a nice, beautiful home. They had this beautiful living room, and the couch had plastic on it. And no one ever sat there. No one. No one. They had beautiful, beautiful pictures of family members. It was a beautiful room. Had great sunshine some parts of the day, and there was a park across the street. Maybe when I was younger, they would stand me at the window to look at the park across the street and watch the cars because it's Foster and whatnot. But in general, no one ever sat there except, and my brother mentioned, because they had a television there. It was never on. They never used it, except, of course, when there was a baseball game in the afternoon. Either team didn't matter, of course, mostly the Cubs in the afternoon. So Ma Pete's programs were on. And if Ma Pete's programs were on, that was on the television in the back. There was no like, but we wanted this or we want. No. We had to go to the front room. We would sit on the floor. They didn't make us sit on the floor, I don't think. Just nobody ever sat on the couch, so we sat on the floor. And that's the only time that room was used. If her programs were on, I'm glad that Auntie Marla gets a good laugh, because it's appropriate to laugh here today too. But that was what it was like, yeah. That's nobody was ever in that room. I will share, because I'm sure that it's a story. While slightly embarrassing, my father would probably tell it. I don't know if Matt and Uncle really want me to, but when my father and mother got married, my father left the house, my uncle and my aunt were quite nervous that there would no longer be dinner. Because apparently dinner was only cooked for Barry, who, instead of using a plate, used the platter. So I'm told, of course. And the love of a grandparent is in many, many ways greater of that of a parent, in that parents still might always be on the side of their kid. I can tell you without a doubt that a grandparent is 150% always with you and always there for you. And it won't be missed because it will always be there, but today I feel that loss. I'm sure that the rest of us do as well. You want me to? I'll finish. I don't even know if I need them. What? No, I don't know if I need them. Glasses. There we go. I'll just finish with a reading of Psalm 16. It's not. I don't think we have it in the book. It's a special, a different book. It's just a common to do. I mean, I will read them anyways. I'll read it in English, but the English translation here starts with the first words in Hebrew. Michtam LeDavid, so which is sort of like one of David's writings to himself. Guard me, God, in for you I have taken refuge. You have said to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good beyond you. As for the holy ones who are in the earth, and the mighty in whom is all my desire, their sorrows will multiply, those that run to other gods. Their blood libations will I not pour out, and take their names upon my lips. The Lord is my allotted portion and my share. You sustain my fate. Portions have fallen to me in pleasant places. Lovely indeed is my estate. I will bless the Lord who has given me counsel. My conscience admonishes me at night. I have set the Lord before me always, because God is at my right hand. I shall not falter. Therefore my heart rejoices and my entire being exalts. Also my body will rest secure, for you will not abandon me to the grave, nor will you let your devout one see destruction. You will make known to me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. There is delight at your right hand for eternity.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue at Westlawn Cemetery, located at 7801 West Montrose in Norridge. The family will be observing the traditional period of Shiva at the Leib residence at 4000 Enfield Avenue here in Skokie. They are going to start Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night when the Sabbath ends. The memorial contributions to the Arie Crown Hebrew Day School or the National Autism Association. For those of you who are joining us online, all that information can be found on the website. For those of you who are here, that information is on the service folder. If you'd like to leave a message for the family, you could use the QR code to send a video message as well. For those of you who will be driving in the funeral procession, the procession will be forming in the parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, please use your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections. Please do not speak or text on your cellular phone while driving to the cemetery. At this time, I ask everyone to please rise and stand in place as the pallbearers come forward and as we escort the casket of Edith Leib from the chapel. Then you may return to your cars. If you're not going to the cemetery, have a restful Shabbat. The pallbearers just follow. Pallbearers.